Hello, grammar and writing students. This is a short review of fragments, comma splices, and run-ons. These are very common writing mistakes that students write or people write, no matter how old or young they are. It is a very common kind of problem to have. You may not have a problem with all of them, but you should be highly aware, and this lesson will help show you how to identify them and how to correct them. So let's look at an example of one. And here's a question for you to consider. What happens when you run on and never stop writing and your sentences never end? Even this question is a little complicated, even though it's not technically a run on. But look at this one. Wow, did you see the giant lizard that was attacking New York and the scientists and French agent were fighting together to save the city? They were chased relentlessly until the monster was caught on a bridge. That was really scary and exciting. Whew, it took a big breath to even read that out loud. Imagine trying to decipher that whether you're reading it out loud or reading it to yourself. Likely is you'd have to go back and say, now what really happened there? And so you really want to write very complete, concise sentences. But what happens if you write it this way? All right, this one has breaks with periods, so I'm going to read it that way. But watch what happens. Wow, you see the giant lizard that was attacking New York? And the scientist and French agent fighting together to save the city and were chased relentlessly until the monster was caught on a bridge, which was very scary and exciting. So now it's broken up, but if you took each piece and looked at them individually, you would notice that some things need to be added to other things, or it feels like it's incomplete, or like some of the information is left out. That's called fragmentation. Again, we talk in fragments a lot. We text in fragments. When we talk or text, we can ask whoever we're communicating with, what did you really mean there? So there are three criteria for correct sentence. All three must be present to make the sentence complete and understandable and clear, and that is what our goal is here. So let's look at this one. First of all, you have to have the subject, and that's someone or something doing the action, or who or what the sentence is about. So John runs every day, or John is fast. In both cases, John being a noun, I could use a pronoun he, um, is the subject here. So you could answer the question, what is he doing, or what is John doing? He runs. Oh, what is that sentence about? It's about John, and John is fast. You need a predicate, and that's a verb. It's an action word or a linking word. Either one will make the sentence complete. So John runs, and it's an action. Or John is fast. Is links John to fast, making the idea complete. You need a complete thought. It may be that you need a helping verb or other information to make the idea complete. Look at this fragment. John running a mile. Well, I have John subject, and running is sort of a verb, but it sounds a little incomplete. In fact, because I'm missing the helper here, I don't know when it's happening. So I need something like John is running a mile, and that says he's doing it now. Or I might use was, which means he did it at an earlier time. Or I might even say will be to show what he is planning to do. An incomplete sentence, just as I've used in my explanation, is called a fragment. And again, you use it by adding the missing part or possibly attaching it to another nearby sentence. and I'll show you how that happens. So here I will go to the park. And that's a perfectly great sentence. But I think about it and I say, well, maybe I need to add why I want to go. So I add because it's nice outside. And I had a period here, so my thought is to go ahead and make a capital letter here because that's what you start a sentence with, and then add the word because. But if I had to take just this part of the statement here, because it's nice outside, you would know what I was talking about. That's because it's a fragment. So it needed to go with the previous sentence. My brain clued, because it's a bit of a linear action, is to capitalize the first letter of the added information and start there and put a period. But what I added most likely was a fragment. So here I will go to the park because it's nice outside. And you can use editor marks if you were marking this on a paper and you use two joining, looks like half circles here, and then you draw a line, a diagonal line across the B to uncapitalize it. And you would, when you put the joining circles in, you don't necessarily need to mark out the period, but you could cross out the period. And this says, put me together and make me one sentence. Another error often made by writers is a comma splice. So you can see in the name it's using a comma to splice or put things together. They used to talk about that when they were talking about the old-fashioned film. When they put two pieces together, you call it splicing. So it's two sentences joined together incorrectly with just a comma. You cannot just put two shorter sentences together with just a comma because you'll create a comma splice. So here's an example. Susan works hard, comma, she runs to relieve stress. So there are two sentences here. Susan works hard, that's the first sentence. The second sentence is she runs to relieve stress. And of course, in the middle, there's my comma. And since I have a subject and a predicate, another subject and another predicate, even though she refers to Susan, I created a comma splice. So comma is not enough, I like to call it glue, to put two sentences together. You need something stronger. So you need a conjunction to go with it. A conjunction would be a word like a fanboy, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so, or other kind of conjunction. Sometimes there are a few conjunctions you can use that don't require a comma, like because, or since, or while, but that would also make it a correct sentence and not a comma splice. So here are the fanboys. So if I want to use a comma, I should use one of these conjunctions, and this is a mnemonic design so I can remember them in order to join the two sentences correctly and not create a comma splice. So here I had the comma, so I added the word so. Susan works hard, so she runs to relieve stress. And now it's correct. Now, our first inkling may be to use and can be overused. And in this case, the working hard creates a problem of stress, so she runs to relieve it. So this is a causal word here that shows us the connection. Another way to fix a comma splice is turn the comma into a semicolon. And a semicolon is just a period over a comma. And then you can add a conjunction if you want with that semicolon. Don't use fanboys. You would use one of these kind of conjunctions to join them together with a semicolon. And you put the semicolon at the end of the first sentence, the conjunction and then a comma after the conjunction. So here's an example. I took that same sentence, changed my comma into a semicolon, and I used the therefore instead of so. Therefore is the proper kind of conjunction to use with a semicolon. And then you have to put a comma afterwards. So run-ons is our third kind of error. And you saw that example I read about the monster and the scientist and so forth. That's just a bunch of sentences put together with no punctuation. It's almost as if someone just had a running thought and kept writing and writing and writing. And that might be okay for a rough draft, but you would need to go back and correct that in order to make it complete sentences and not just going on and on and on, which makes it difficult to read either out loud or just in your head. The person who's reading it has to decipher all that material, and it becomes a little hard to do so. So here we go. Susan works hard. She runs to relieve stress. This time I left no marks, no conjunction, nothing here between the two sentences. So it is run on. So what you do to identify run-ons is look where the two sentences come together. They're put together as one. And if there's no punctuation, it's a run-on. And I think of the O in run-on as zero punctuation or zero glue, so to speak, to put them together correctly. So Susan works hard. There's the gap. She runs to relieve stress. And that's, you always look to where the two sentences are. That's how you can identify where the run-ons come together. There can be other commas in a sentence, but that would be still a run-on. So you need, again, find where the two sentences come together to find whether it's a run-on. So every day at the office, that's not a sentence, that's a fragment. So put a comma behind it because it's going to introduce the sentence, Susan works hard. And then here we go, there's our gap, she runs to relieve stress at home. So there's the gap. And so the comma here is not joining two sentences. So this is still a run-on. So here's some versions that fixes that mistake. Every day at the office, comma, Susan works hard. There's my correction, semicolon. She runs to relieve stress at home. Or every day at the office, Susan works hard, period. She runs to relieve stress at home. So it's always correct if you have two sentences to just put a period between the two. Every day at the office, comma, Susan works hard, comma, so, and there's our joining word, she runs to relieve stress at home. And then the last version, every day at the office, comma, Susan works hard, semicolon, therefore, comma, she runs to relieve stress at home. Comma splices also can have a sprinkling of other commas, but again, look where the two sentences come together, and that's where you can identify whether it's a comma splice. Every day at the office, comma, you can see that this is not a sentence. This is a sentence, Susan works hard, but this comma is only marking off an introduction. But then I have another comma, she runs to relieve stress at home. There we go. There's the next sentence, and that's where I need to change the mistake here. So here are some comma splices and run-ons, and we need to figure out which one they are. So let's look at these and see if we can figure them out. So John works at McDonald's. He wants to go to college. And that's a run-on. I can see John works at McDonald's. There's one sentence. He wants to go to college is the second sentence. So I would need to fix it right here. Unfortunately, John does not have his GED. He must go back to school. So here, John does not have his GED. That's a sentence. This first comma is only marking off a single word, so that doesn't make it a comma splice. That doesn't affect it. But here I had John does not have, and then he must go. So right there is where my mistake is. And since it has a comma, it's a comma splice. Let's look at these examples and see if we can figure out what they are. This fall, he will enroll at Durham Technical Community College. However, he will need to cut back work. So again, I have a comma here, but this is not a sentence. Here's the sentence. He will enroll at Durham Technical Community College, comma. However, comma. However is a conjunction that requires a semicolon, and since the writer used a comma, this makes it a comma splice. Getting his diploma will allow him to make more money, and he will get a degree in management. So this time I have getting his diploma will allow. So getting his diploma, that's the subject, will allow him, and that's the predicate, and it tells you what it will allow. So that's complete there. And then there's an and we know is used to join things. He will get a degree in management, but that's a complete sentence. So and is not strong enough to join these together. And since there's nothing here, this is a run-on. So here are some corrections. They're not the only corrections you can make, but there are some suggestions. John works at McDonald's, comma, but he wants to go to college. Unfortunately, John does not have his GED, semicolon. He must go back to school. Or you can use the word so with a comma and fix that one. This fall, he will enroll at Durham Technical Community College, semicolon, because remember, that's what we use with however. Getting his diploma will allow him to make more money, comma, there's my correction, and he will get a degree in management. You can also divide comma splices and run-ons into separate sentences. So I would use this technique only if the two items or all the things stuck together were more complicated. But it's always your choice if it's your writing to choose to write shorter sentences. But if you're in a college class, they generally expect you to write a little longer sentences, especially if the ideas have some kind of connection. So let's look at this, and it says break into two sentences. After a year in school, John earned his diploma and he applied to the college to get his associate's degree. He will enter the business program in the summer. He will take 3 classes in math, English, and computers. You should be able to see, looks like we have multiple sentences stuck, and I've asked you to just break it into 2. So I have John earned his diploma, there's 1. He applied to the college to get his associate's degree, there's 2. He will enter the business program. He will take 3 classes. So how could I break this into 2 sentences? There's multiple ways you could do this. Again, if you were just doing this on your own, you could make it into 4 sentences, but I asked you to break it into 2. So let's take the first 2 here and break it there. So we'll put a period after degree, and then we'll capitalize the he. But over here, I can't just let he will, so I need to change this, either put a semicolon or a comma and, or take the he out and put and. And in both those cases, that will create 2 sentences. So what kind of sentence was mistake was that? Was it a run-on or a comma splice? It was a run-on and a comma splice. You say, wow, I can make two of those mistakes at once? Yes, you can. So here's my correction. After a year in school, comma, John earned his diploma, comma, and he applied to the college to get his associate's degree, period. Capitalize he, and then down further I put a comma and the word and. So how do I avoid these mistakes? First of all, write simpler to the point sentences. That will keep you from creating run-ons or comma splices. And again, make sure they're to the point in order to avoid fragments. And then go back and combine the shorter sentences and make longer ones. So sometimes it's easier to write several short sentences and then go back and make a decision, can or should I combine them together? Again, avoid using more than one fanboy with commas when you're combining. You can use one, but then you have to resort to a semicolon. But you only should use one semicolon per sentence. So then you can use two sentences, add two more sentences with a fanboy. Thanks for watching this video. I hope it helped you pick out and correct these comma splices, run-ons, and fragments. Have a good day.